Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Julian always believed stability came from hard work. At 41, he'd built a solid career as a systems analyst at a tech company where he was respected for his dedication and technical skill. His routine was predictable, almost mathematical. He woke up at 6, got to the office before 8, worked until 7 at night, and on weekends tried to make up for lost time with Maya, his wife of 6 years. She was 36, worked as a project manager at a digital marketing firm, and always seemed to share his values, building something together, having a home that was truly theirs, living with dignity and purpose. Julian's history with owning homes was complicated and painful. He'd lost both parents in a car accident when he was just 17, right in the middle of his senior year of high school. The loss was devastating, not just emotionally, but financially too. With no adequate life insurance and no close relatives able to take him in permanently, Julian spent his teens and early 20s moving from one rented apartment to another, staying temporarily with uncles he barely knew, sharing cramped dorm rooms with college friends, always carrying that persistent, aching feeling that he didn't belong anywhere. Every move was a reminder that he had no roots, no safe place to return to. When he met Maya at a technology conference 5 years earlier, he'd already made a firm promise to himself: one day, he'd have something that was truly his, a place where he could finally feel at home. She seemed to understand that deeply. In their early conversations, Maya told him she'd grown up in an unstable environment too, with divorced parents and constant moves between their houses. She said she dreamed of a place where she could finally put down roots, decorate however she wanted, and feel a sense of permanence. That connection became one of the pillars of their relationship. For 3 intense years, Julian saved every penny he could. He turned down trips with friends, skipped expensive dinners out, kept driving the same old, noisy car he'd had since his 20s, and even canceled streaming subscriptions to save a few dollars a month. Maya contributed here and there, but with less financial commitment. She said she preferred to live in the moment and enjoy her youth, but that she fully supported his dream. Julian never questioned it. He truly believed that when the house was finally theirs, when she could see the concrete result of all that sacrifice, she'd understand and value every moment of it. When the day finally came, Julian felt like everything made sense. The house had 3 well-spaced bedrooms, a small but carefully tended yard with a few fruit trees, and sat in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood where people still greeted each other on the street and kids played on the sidewalks. It was perfect. Throughout the entire 2-month buying process, credit checks, price negotiations, bureaucratic paperwork, Maya was there. She picked the wall colors, suggested where to place the furniture, and took dozens of photos of the empty house, saying she wanted to document the start of this new chapter. Julian was radiant, feeling like he'd finally built the foundation of a life worth living. On the day of the final signing, they went together to the house. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, with a gentle breeze making the leaves in the yard sway softly. Julian held the keys like they were made of pure gold, feeling their weight in his hand. He slowly opened the front door, savoring the moment, stepped into the empty living room where his footsteps echoed against the white walls, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: genuine belonging, the sense that he finally had a place in the world. He turned to Maya with a wide smile, expecting to see the same spark of happiness and fulfillment in her eyes. But what he saw was a distant, almost cold expression, like she was mentally somewhere else. "I don't know if I want to keep going with this, Julian." The words came out of her mouth in a flat, almost casual tone, like she was commenting on the weather. He blinked several times, confused, thinking he'd misunderstood. "What? What do you mean?" Maya looked around the empty room, avoiding his gaze, as if she were assessing something she couldn't, or wouldn't, name. "I don't know if this is my place. I don't know if I want to stay married to you. I need time to think." Julian felt the ground literally disappear beneath his feet, like he'd fallen into an empty void. This made no sense. They'd planned this together for years. She'd been part of every step. She'd chosen this house specifically. She'd said 1,000 times she wanted this. Maya, what are you talking about? We just signed the purchase. We planned this for 3 years. I know, she interrupted, her voice strangely controlled and detached. But I need to think about what I really want. I don't know if I want to stay married to you. I'm sorry, but that's it. Julian stood frozen in the middle of the empty room, completely unable to process what he was hearing. His mind spun, trying to find a logical explanation. Part of him wanted to scream, demand a better explanation, question every word. Another part wanted to drop to his knees and beg her to explain what was happening, what he'd done wrong. But something inside him, maybe wounded pride, maybe pain turning to anger, stopped him from doing either. Then go, he said, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. I won't force you to stay. I won't hold you to anything. Maya grabbed her bag, took one last look around, and walked out the door without looking back, saying nothing more. Julian stayed there, alone in that huge, empty house that was supposed to represent a new beginning, listening only to the echo of his own footsteps and trying to understand what the hell had just happened. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and pain. Julian tried to keep up with work, but he couldn't focus. He'd sit in front of the computer and just stare at the screen without seeing anything, his mind constantly returning to that moment in the empty living room. He called Maya several times, but she didn't answer. He sent long messages asking if they could talk, trying to understand what had happened, but her replies were always short and evasive. I need space. I'm not ready to talk about this. Please, Julian, give me some time. He didn't push after the third attempt. If she wanted to leave, if she truly didn't want to be with him, he wasn't the kind of man who would hold her against her will. 5 days after that devastating moment, Julian was organizing moving boxes in what would be the guest room when something fell out of Maya's backpack, left forgotten in the corner of the closet. It was a crumpled, partially torn receipt. He picked it up without thinking, just to toss it in the trash, but something caught his eye immediately, a dinner at an expensive downtown Italian restaurant, 2 days before the house purchase. The amount printed was high, over $200 just for food and wine. Julian frowned, trying to remember. They hadn't dined together that day. He'd worked late on an urgent project, got home exhausted around 10 p.m., and Maya said she'd been home all day, tired and not in the mood to go out. An uncomfortable, almost nauseating feeling began to rise in his chest. He grabbed the laptop, opened the browser with slightly trembling hands, logged into their shared joint account for household expenses, and meticulously reviewed the statements from the last 6 months. What he saw in the next 2 hours made him stop breathing for several seconds. There was a long series of expenses he absolutely didn't recognize: hotels downtown, always on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, upscale restaurants he'd never visited, even purchases at high-end men's clothing stores. Julian had never been to any of these places. And Maya had never mentioned a single one of these expenses. He felt rage rise like hot lava through his chest, but forced himself to stay calm. He needed more information before drawing conclusions, no matter how obvious they seemed. He took the crumpled restaurant receipt, carefully wrote down the name and full address on his phone, and the next day, a Friday, left work early and went there during lunch. The place was elegant and sophisticated, with dark polished wood tables, subtle chandeliers, and soft, romantic lighting that created an intimate atmosphere. Julian felt his stomach twist just imagining Maya there with someone else. He approached the manager, a middle-aged man with gray hair and a perfectly tailored suit, who greeted him with a professional smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "Actually, I'm not here to eat," Julian began, trying to keep his voice steady. He showed a photo of Maya on his phone. "This is my wife. Does she come here often?" The manager looked at the photo for a few seconds, and Julian immediately noticed a flicker of discomfort cross his face, a telling hesitation. "Sir, I can't disclose specific information about our clients." It's our policy. Please, Julian insisted, and this time he couldn't fully hide the pain in his voice. I just need to know the truth. She said she was home that day, but I found the receipt. I need to know. The manager glanced around the restaurant, checking if anyone was listening, then sighed heavily. There was genuine compassion in his eyes when he finally answered. She comes here, yes. Every week, sometimes twice. Always with the same man. They seem very intimate. I'm sorry. Julian felt something tighten painfully in his chest, but forced himself to keep going. Could you show me the security footage? I know it's irregular, but I need to be sure. The manager hesitated for a long moment, clearly torn between the restaurant's policy and compassion for the man in front of him. Finally, he gave a subtle nod. Follow me. But this stays between us, understood? They went to a small, cramped office in the back filled with monitors. The manager sat down, worked on the computer for a few minutes navigating video files, then turned the screen toward Julian. This is the recording from her last visit. It was 3 days ago. Julian forced himself to look at the screen, even though every cell in his body wanted to run away. There she was, sitting at a corner table under the soft, romantic light, laughing in a completely relaxed, happy way, holding the hand of a man he didn't know. The man was younger, maybe 30, with neatly cut dark hair, colorful tattoos climbing his arms, and a confident smile. They looked extremely intimate, comfortable, like a couple who'd been together for years. In one moment on the video that shattered Julian's heart, Maya leaned across the table and kissed the man's cheek for a long time, then laughed when he whispered something in her ear. Julian looked away, unable to keep watching. Can you send me this file? He asked, his voice hoarse and choked. The manager nodded with a somber expression. I'll email it to you now. And man, I'm truly sorry. No one deserves this. Julian left the restaurant with weak legs, feeling physically ill. He went back to his car parked on the street, sat in the driver's seat, and stayed there for long minutes that felt like hours, just breathing and trying to process. It wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated premeditation. She'd been with another man while they bought the house together. She'd been laughing and kissing someone else while he sacrificed literally everything to build a future he believed was theirs. The tears came then, hot and bitter, and Julian didn't try to stop them. That night, Julian didn't sleep a single minute. He lay in the dark for hours, then gave up and turned on the laptop. He spent the entire night meticulously reviewing bank statements, noting every suspicious date, every location, every expense. He created a detailed spreadsheet, cross-referenced information, built a complete timeline. Every new discovery was like a knife. The hotels had started exactly 8 months ago, right after she'd said she was so happy with their relationship. The expensive dinners, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, began shortly after. She'd been doing this methodically for nearly a full year, lying to him every single day. On Saturday morning, exhausted but determined, Julian went after more concrete answers. He returned to the restaurant, this time asking discreetly if any staff knew who the man in the video was. A young waitress, who seemed genuinely sympathetic to his situation, said she'd served their table several times. He always pays with a corporate card. I think his name is Lance something. I heard her call him that. He works as a personal trainer at a gym nearby, Fitness Premium. Julian wrote down the gym's name on his phone and went there immediately. The place was large and modern, with top-of-the-line equipment and glass walls. He walked in pretending to be interested in hiring a personal trainer, and when he saw the man from the security footage walking through the gym chatting with a client, he casually pointed and asked the receptionist, "Is this guy good?" "A friend recommended someone but I can't remember the name." "Oh, that's Lance Patterson," the receptionist replied cheerfully. "He's great, super dedicated, but unfortunately his schedule is completely full. Want me to check if another trainer has availability?" "No, thanks," Julian said, quickly leaving before anyone noticed his state. Now he had a full name, Lance Patterson. He went home and spent the next few hours obsessively researching on social media. He easily found Lance's Instagram profile, hundreds of gym photos, motivational quotes about perseverance and determination, enthusiastic testimonials from satisfied clients. And there, buried in a photo from 6 months back where Lance posed with a group of clients after a class, was Maya in the background. She'd commented on the post, "Best trainer ever. Changed my life," with 3 red heart emojis. Julian felt actual physical nausea, ran to the bathroom, and vomited. After washing his face with cold water and trying to regain some control, Julian decided he needed one final confrontation. He couldn't keep living in this uncertainty and agony. He sent Maya a short, direct message, "We need to talk. In person. It's important." She took nearly 5 hours to reply, which only increased his anxiety and anger, but finally agreed to meet him at the house the next day, Sunday afternoon. When Maya arrived precisely at 3 p.m., she looked visibly nervous and tense. Julian was sitting in the still nearly empty living room, on just 2 cheap folding chairs he'd bought at a discount store. He gestured for her to sit, coldly, and she obeyed silently, avoiding his gaze. So, he began, making a conscious effort to keep his voice calm and controlled. "You said you needed time to think. I gave you that time. Now I need you to explain exactly what's going on. And this time, I want the truth." Maya sighed deeply, looking away from the empty window. "Julian, I really don't know how to explain this in a way that makes sense. I feel trapped in this relationship. I feel like we lost the connection we had at the beginning. We don't really talk anymore, we don't have that intimacy." "Connection," Julian repeated, letting the word hang in the air for a moment. "Intimacy. Funny you mention those exact words." He pulled his phone from his pocket, unlocked it with steady fingers, and placed it on the chair between them, showing the frozen image from the restaurant's security video. "Is this your idea of connection and intimacy?" Maya's face went completely pale, as if all the blood had drained instantly. She opened and closed her mouth several times, but no words came out. Her eyes widened, and Julian saw genuine panic in them. 8 months, Maya, Julian continued, and now his voice began to tremble slightly with contained emotion. "You've been with this Lance for at least 8 months. I have the bank statements, the security footage, everything documented. While I was saving every single penny I earned, while I was working 12 hours a day, while I sacrificed everything and dreamed of this house that would be ours, you were spending our money on expensive hotels with another man." Maya swallowed hard, tears starting to form. "Julian, it wasn't exactly like that. I was really confused about us, I didn't know what." "Confused?" Julian let out a humorless, bitter laugh. "You were so incredibly confused you managed to organize weekly hotel dates? So lost and disoriented you could manage fancy dinners using money that was ours? So unsure of your own feelings that you could kiss and hug this guy while pretending to me you were building a future beside me?" "I'm sorry," she whispered weakly, tears now falling freely down her face. "I never meant to hurt you this way. I swear I didn't." "But you did," Julian replied, now looking directly and intensely into her eyes, forcing her to meet his gaze. "And do you know what hurts the most? You didn't have the courage to be honest with me. You were just going to walk away, leave me alone in this huge house, make me think the problem was with me, that I wasn't enough. Meanwhile, all this time, you were cheating on me." Maya tried to defend herself, her voice desperate. "You were never really present, Julian. You only thought about work, about saving money, about future plans. You never really looked at me, never asked how I was feeling. To give you a dignified life," he finally exploded, losing the careful control he'd maintained. "To build something solid that was ours. To create the stability you said you wanted. But you didn't really want that, did you? You just wanted the benefits, without having to make any of the necessary sacrifices. There was a heavy, tense silence that felt like an eternity. Maya wiped her tears with the back of her hand, took several deep breaths trying to compose herself. So what do you want now? What do you expect me to do? Julian picked up a thick brown envelope strategically placed beside the chair and placed it on the seat between them with deliberate motion. Divorce. The papers are all filled out, all you have to do is sign. The house is registered solely in my name. It was bought entirely with my money, my savings. And more importantly, you committed proven adultery. Under this state's law, you won't be entitled to anything. Maya stared at the envelope as if it were a final death sentence. Julian, please, can't we talk about this more calmly? Can't we try? No, he cut her off with absolute firmness. There's no more we. That us died the moment you decided to betray me. Sign the papers and leave my life. She tried to argue for a few more minutes, saying she'd contributed emotionally to the relationship for years, that she deserved at least some financial compensation for the time invested. Julian just laughed, a bitter, wounded sound. Emotional contribution? You spent nearly a year cheating on me, Maya. Lying to me every single day. Your only real contribution was breaking me apart inside. In the weeks that followed, Julian discovered even more disturbing details through mutual friends who began speaking now that the truth had been exposed. He learned from a coworker who knew people at the gym that Lance had a well-known reputation. He was famous for seducing married women, women with money or useful social connections, then using their networks to expand his base of wealthy clients. It was practically his pattern of behavior. He wasn't actually interested in Maya as a person, he was interested in what she could do for him professionally. 3 weeks after the devastating confrontation, Maya tried calling Julian's phone several times. He ignored the first 5 calls, but finally answered the 6th, though he said nothing. He just stayed silent, waiting. She was clearly crying on the other end, her voice broken and desperate. Julian, I made a terrible mistake. I was completely wrong about everything. Can you forgive me? Can we try again? Julian closed his eyes, took a deep breath, feeling a complex mix of lingering pain and something like pity. No, Maya. I can't forgive you. And even if I could, even if I were capable of it, I wouldn't. You made your conscious choices for months. Now live with the consequences. Please, she begged, her voice breaking completely. I don't have anyone left. I lost everything. Lance left me when he found out about the divorce. My friends all sided with you. I have nowhere to go. You didn't lose anything, Maya, Julian replied, keeping his voice surprisingly calm but absolutely firm. You threw it all away deliberately. There's a huge difference between losing something and destroying it with your own hands. And he hung up without waiting for a response. The months that followed were genuinely difficult and challenging. Julian went to weekly therapy, trying to process the betrayal and understand how he hadn't seen the signs that were probably there all along. He had sleepless nights, moments of intense anger, periods of deep sadness. But slowly, week by week, he began to rebuild himself as a person. He painted all the walls in the house with new colors that were purely his preference, bought new furniture chosen only based on his own taste, transformed every room into something that was genuinely and authentically his. He even started going out socially again, accepted invitations from friends he'd neglected, met some interesting people, cautiously tested the waters of dating again. 1 full year after that devastating day in the empty house, Julian was comfortably seated on the porch he'd renovated himself when he received a message from a number he hadn't saved. It was from Sophie, a former co-worker of Maya's that they both knew. The message was long and detailed. It said Maya was living in a tiny, run-down apartment with 2 younger female co-workers, desperately trying to rebuild her finances. That she'd lost several important consulting contracts because people in her professional circle found out about the affair and how she treated Julian. That she was visibly depressed and remorseful, constantly talking about the mistake she'd made. Julian read the message carefully, then deleted it without replying. He didn't feel anger anymore. He didn't feel sadness. He didn't feel any desire for revenge or morbid satisfaction in her suffering. He felt only complete, liberating indifference. Maya had made adult, conscious choices, and now she was living with their natural consequences. He'd made his own choices too. He'd deliberately chosen not to cling to the painful past, he'd actively chosen to move forward with his own life, he'd consciously chosen to value himself as a human being. 2 weeks later, Julian put up a large, "For Sale" sign in front of the house. Not because he didn't like it anymore or because the memories were unbearable, but because he realized something fundamental: he no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. He didn't need to cling to that symbol. He sold the house for an excellent price, well above what he'd paid, and accepted a significantly better job offer in another state, in a city he'd always wanted to live in. He bought an even more beautiful, spacious home, this time without the crushing weight of bitter memories and betrayals. On the night of the final move, as he packed the last boxes in the new place and looked out the window at the illuminated city view, Julian smiled genuinely for the first time in a long time. That house, this one, was truly his. Truly. No ghosts from the past, no buried betrayals, no corrosive regrets. It was the clean, honest fresh start he deserved after everything. And Maya, wherever she was now, would have to find her own path alone. He didn't hate her anymore. He simply didn't think about her anymore, except occasionally as a lesson learned. And that, Julian realized with crystal clarity, was the greatest victory of all, the deep, genuine indifference that comes only after complete healing. He'd learned that building something truly valuable required real sacrifice, but holding on to someone who didn't value or respect that sacrifice was the real mistake. Now, finally, Julian was completely free. And this time, freedom didn't come with sharp pain or bitter resentment, it came wrapped in lasting peace and self-knowledge. He had survived, grown, and was ready for whatever came next. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.